y'all, I'm Ellen. We've been super inspired by our journeys of self-healing and discovery.
And I'm Sam, and we want to share our experiences with you to help you get curious about yourself, reconnect, and get intentional about your life so you know what makes you happy.
Welcome to Woo New, the podcast. We're super excited about this conversation today with Mimi Young. She's a shamanic intuitive, a neurofeedback practitioner, and she's also the founder of Ceremonie, an occult education and esoteric lifestyle brand that offers shamanic and occult courses, distance readings, and plant medicines for skin and aura. And we're just so excited to be talking to you today, Mimi.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're our first shamanic practitioner, so this is going to be really exciting.
Yay.
I was just reminded too, like we had done an interview last year with, it was two licensed like PhD psychotherapists. And I ended up having a shamanic journey with one of them because she was kind of veering over into the energy side of things as well. And so that's my only foray into any shamanic anything. And so this will be a really educational conversation.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, it's, and I think when we talk about shamanism, it's so broad that, yeah, it will be like, whether if you are like a Jungian like psychoanalyst, or if you are someone who's more of a herbalist, like there's just such a varied and wide, and I would say infinite amount of ways one can relate to the world in that shamanic context.
Let's break it down, because I think that might actually help both of us as well as our listeners understand when we talk about the term shamanic or shamanism, like what does that actually mean to you?
So traditionally, shamanism is the idea that one will enter into an altered state of consciousness, typically through drumming or through rattling or the combination, or through some form of entheogenic-based plant medicine. And they would spirit travel into a different plane, into that spirit or other world. And there they would relate with different entities that are beyond just human. So they can certainly relate with human, let's say, the human dead, like be it if it's someone that you once knew, or perhaps someone in your lineage, so like let's say ancestral connection. Or it could also be relating to entities that are not typically classified as people or persons in this current reality that that we are in. So that would be being able to speak and receive wisdom from plants or animals or rocks or the wind or whatever. Just you can kind of continue to list that list. And then, of course, the function of being in relationship with them is to be able to bring back that wisdom to apply to oneself or to share with one's community. So that's one way to define shamanism, particularly shamanic journeying. And then the other way to define a shamanism is to see it through the lens of animism. So to really understand that, humans are not centric to existence. We are part of this greater cycle, this greater weaving or fabric. And everything has, because everything is a form of energy, everything also to a certain degree can be related through their intelligence. So through, recognizing that plants is plant people and rock people and so forth, and understanding that they have their own sentience and their own wisdom to impart. So it's really different, let's say, than many religious systems that sort of feel that, God created humans and then God created animals to support humans, or God created plants to support humans. It's a really, really different model than something like that.
So in which we are essentially all equal.
Oh, yeah, and interdependent. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's so cool. Can I ask you a little bit about the drumming and the rattling? Like, what does that do specifically to help someone begin a journey?
Yeah.
Is it just the beat?
Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about, more. I'm going to put a bit of my like neurofeedback hat on, because I feel like maybe the science piece could help people just understand it a little better. So humans, we have different brain waves. The brain waves that most of us are operating in when we are awake, at our computer, getting stuff done, would be something that's described as beta. So beta brain waves is highly functional based, aware of timelines, aware of impeding threats. Let's say, be it if you're out in the wild, maybe there's like a tiger out there, or maybe your threat is like losing your job because you can't get this deadline submitted, like this project submitted for a deadline. So is the beta brain was very analytical, very survival based. And it's designed to serve us in executing whatever we need to be able to put food on the table and to make us feel safe. Now, if we were to look at other brainwaves, though, those brainwaves may not have that function. So there's something called alpha brainwaves, which is very much about being really in tune with your body and being able to sort of sense things through your body. So pro athletes often are able to really access alpha. And that's why, let's say in a field, players just intuitively know where to be even before the ball gets there. So that's like really just very, very powerful, but a different function. And then there's something called theta brainwaves. Theta brainwaves is relaxed, but you're not deep sleeping. So you're not in, let's say, REM sleep. That's more associated with delta, which is, of course, like the slowest, densest brainwave. When your body is in deep sleep, cellular restoration is happening. And then, of course, that space between that waking consciousness, that alpha and beta and gamma, and that deep rest, that middle ground would be theta. So theta is where you're in relaxed state, but you're not so deep that you have completely lost touch with consciousness. And this is where a lot of memories are stored and experiences. And let's say if you were to go to a breathwork class, or if you were to engage in Reiki, or if you were to be meditating, it's the theta that is accessed. So it's that same set, right? That same set of theta waves that drumming and rattling activates. And that's, of course, also when shamanic practitioners start engaging with that reality. They're stepping into that, or accessing those brainwaves, the theta ones.
So during one of your, I know you do distance, like shamanic readings and things like that. Are you basically going into this theta state and receiving the messages for your client, or how does that work?
Yeah. And yes, so like short answer, that's exactly what I do. And I, just did one this morning. So I'll go into rituals. I have, like some ritual based steps that I execute before I enter into that actual state. And then, and once I'm there, that's when I can access like infinite amount of worlds. So today, for instance, and I won't go into detail because of course that's private, but I accessed a spirit world that is called the lower world. And I met with a few animal spirits, and they shared some insights that had to do with that person's question. So that individual had a question. And so, and this is a client that I've already done work for in the past. So today it wasn't about me venturing there to discover who that individual's allies are. I already know who that individual's allies are. So it's just about going back to that place and asking some questions that relate to that particular issue that client has at hand. And there, of course, there's rules there too that spirits need to operate by, and that I, of course, have to operate by when I'm there. But they're different rules than, let's say, our consensual 3-dimensional reality. So rules could be like, I can fly there, for instance. I can speak languages that I can't speak here. I can see things that typically, defy gravity or like other sort of scientific law. And it doesn't matter, because the whole point is to receive the wisdom. And it's the wisdom that's the most important, whether than us, saying like, how is this possible? Or like, is it real? Or how do you prove that through science and that type of thing? I bring all that back. And either, depending on the client, if they want to have a video call that's recorded where I can send them the replay link after, we can just engage in that discussion of like, okay, this is what the journey was about. This is who I met. This is what they meant. These are your various spiritual homework that you can engage in to help support this. Or if they prefer for me to email them, because maybe time zone or whatever, it's just not possible to actually both jump on a call that meets our time in an aligned way, then at least they have that option where I can email them everything that I just listed, that I would share on a Zoom call would also be shared in an email. And so they have that as their spiritual map, so to speak, to refer to later on.
So this reminds me a little bit of like an Akashic Records reading, except it feels like it's much more vast and has potential to go in any direction.
Well, I do access the Akashic Records if it's in the context of a past life reading. So, the Akashic Records does also exist in the spirit world. And, there's certain protocol to be able to access that place. And then, of course, once you get there, there's certain places that you are allowed to access within the Akashic Records. Yeah, but certainly, I think the format of it in terms of the delivery of the message really varies, from practitioner to practitioner. And for me, it's always made sense for me to share, like, this is what the actual shamanic narrative was, and this is the interpretation of the symbols, because a lot of times it's sort of mumbo jumbo, like yeah. A lot of times it's like a dream, right? So, all this stuff happened, but I don't really know what it meant. So now what? So being able to interpret it is really important, because that's how you make it relatable for the client. Because otherwise it's just like, okay, great, like this happened, but so what? Or yeah. Now what? And it's the now what piece, I feel it's the most important.
So when you work with somebody who's new, I'm picturing it in my mind. It like you don't really know who their allies are just yet, correct?
Not at all.
So it's like for you almost it's like a new adventure to kind of go into the state. And do you just basically wait and see who appears?
Sometimes they come to me and sometimes I have to go to them. It really depends. And yeah, and you discover it's almost like it's a terrible comparison, but it's the best comparison I can think of. It's almost like you're going on a blind date. Like you have no idea who's going to show up or who you're going to meet. When you get there, you're like, oh. But what's cool is that, I've never met a douchebag spirit, but of course, that is always possible. So yeah, you just really get to learn a lot about the client based on the kind of spirit ally they have. And I've been doing this long enough where if, let's say, the client has a particular ally that's a bird, then I know very much so what that kind of individual most likely likes or most likely is gravitating towards in terms of choices in life or taste and things, or even just their personality. And likewise, let's say ones that have wild felines as allies, like as a category, I typically sort of have a sense. And then of course, after that, you just kind of it just really accelerates that getting to know each other part. And and some allies are much warmer and more easier to get to know than other ones. Some are really guarded, and some are almost like they're testing how loyal I will be if they were to share the information with me. And so that first journey is typically in some ways the most surprise filled, because I don't know what to expect. I have to demonstrate that I'm trustworthy, and I have to demonstrate I'm competent, and sometimes they're just so excited to see me that they just blurt everything out, and it really depends. But it's always very, very interesting and very, very fun.
Wow. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
this
So many
sounds
questions.
so crazy.
So like, okay, so getting back to what you were saying about the allies almost kind of almost kind of indicating the type of person that you're working with. Is it just, it's based on like their, is it interest or basically their spirit, like how I guess these different allies would sort of appear?
See it as, how do I explain this? Because I think sometimes people almost equate it with astrology, but I don't actually agree with that comparison. So for instance, like, oh, you're a Taurus. Okay, well, you must be this way. Like, I don't really see it that way at all. It's almost like if we were to, and in the shamanic world, we really do call them teachers, or we call them allies, or we say that they provide medicine for us. And so it's almost like when I go there and I see who is offering their specific medicine to the individual, it's like a doctor is reading a prescription that's been prescribed on a sheet of paper from another doctor. And so when I read them, I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. Like, I totally know what issues they probably have, or like what questions that are like always just like brewing deep within, or what struggles they most likely encounter, what patterns, because these spirit allies function as medicine. So when I know, okay, well, these are the medicines that parallel with this individual, okay, like it's just super clear. And then, of course, that's only one aspect, right? Because that's not actually talking about the actual conversation I have with the allies, or what symbols were present, or what kind of landscape we're in, or what actually happens. Because usually there is some type of storyline. And so I take all that as additional information to the fact of like, oh, okay, it was panther, or it was parrot, or whatever. And then I'll take all that information and I translate that, of course, for the client to understand.
Wow.
How did you get into this? I'm so fascinated.
That was like my next question. We're totally on the same track. I'm like, yeah, how did this all happen?
Well, I mean, yeah, I've talked about this in like various ways or various forms, and sometimes I like just kind of keep it to like the essentials, and other times I'd add a bit more context. But I think short answer, I had I have two kids. I have to kind of bring it to that context. So I brought two beautiful boys into this world, and they're about 7 years apart. And in between, and that wasn't planned, right? Like that was, we never actually set out to have like a large gap between the two kids. And so in between that, it was because I had a few miscarriages. And so by the time I was pregnant, again, finally, kind of thing. Because I mean, that's one thing, getting pregnant and then staying pregnant.
Right.
So, I finally got pregnant again, and with my second child, and some of the initial sort of complications that I had that were similar to the previous pregnancies that ended in miscarriage kind of came about. So I was put on bed rest, and it wound up being over 5 months. And it was during that time that I began meditating daily. And one day I'm saying this with air quotes, I accidentally ventured to that place. But if I were to kind of answer it from a bigger context, I've always had very, very vivid dreams. I've always been able to, like, through the years, to be able to understand what my dreams meant, even though, like, what happened in the dream may not be so obvious to the translation. And I've always been able to connect with plants. Like, as a child, like I spoke with plants, and, like I had a doll and I named her Celery. Like it's always been like that. Yeah, and I, from my like late teens onwards, like it happened a couple times when I was in, oh gosh, must have been like grade 10 or something. And then it sort of disappeared a little bit, and then it came back when I was about 19. I discovered like I have psychic smelling as a gift. And so I don't see things, let's say, like how some people may have, like how some psychics may be able to have these like very visual downloads, like these visions. That's not me. I smell things, and over the years, I've been able to once again attach meaning to the smells. So there's many layers, right? So there's that dream piece, there's a smell piece, There's the connection with plant piece. There's the shamanic journeying piece. And I feel like, and then of course, there's also like my own interest in the occult, like working with tarot or working with the I Ching, which is the ancient Chinese oracle system. So all these layers together was really, I guess it, one thing fed into another. And when one learns more in one discipline, it winds up actually deepening all the other disciplines.
I feel like, yeah, we hear this a lot whenever we speak to different healers and therapists and whatnot, that, every single aspect of yourself is kind of what makes you the healer that you are, and our gifts, right? To as to like, how you bring about, or how you're actually serving people when you are providing this healing. And I find it so fascinating that you also have this like neurofeedback practitioner side of you too, that is, very much based in the science, I guess, of this world. And you have like a foot in both areas. And I'm curious, like how that works together for you.
Yeah, that's a big question. I think for me, there was a time when I really did see them as very separate, or very different from each other. But the more I do it, and the more I'm responding to, this call of being the most whole person that I am. Like, we're always whole, but you can integrate more and more, right? You can integrate more and more of your shadow into your conscious self, and so forth. So I just see it as essentially the same thing, just a slightly different language. Um, I think a lot of people, when they start exploring spirituality, it's because either they're finding ways to, well, there's many different, obviously, reasons, but I think, a lot of times you're finding ways to engage with your intuition. You're finding ways to decrease your stress. You're finding ways to, take care of that insomnia problem. I mean, it's like super common, right? Like, right.
Hell
I
yeah.
mean, like, how many girlfriends do I know started going to breath work because they couldn't sleep at night? So, that's how I really approach neurofeedback too, because if you have a brain that is really self-regulated, and when I mean self-regulated, is like you're not needing coffee to keep you awake. You're not needing, you know, whatever addictions you have, your vices to keep you feeling soothed. Then you are able to have access to all of you. I don't see that too different than any spiritual practice. So neurofeedback really aims to increase one's own brain's capacity to be nimble, to be adaptive, and to self-regulate. It's just a different language. I don't see it too different than, spiritual work, so to speak, because ultimately is if you are in harmony with yourself, you are happy and you can sleep at night, and you know what I mean? Like, and you can stay awake in the morning and all these things. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that echoes sort of our journey so beautifully, actually, because we were the same way. We got out of our corporate careers and we were like, okay, sleep. How are we going to make this happen again? And it was a lot of just learning about our brains and trying to figure out what was going on. And then it was sort of like that piece of it brought us to some of these larger, deeper questions, more exploration around spirituality and different healing modalities. And the coolest thing, I think, is the more that I learn about it and the more that I learn about quantum physics and neuroscience and all of these things, it's like they all point back to the exact same place.
Mm-hmm.
It's just different ways of getting there.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find that your clients are usually on one side or the other, or do you find that because of who you are and their trust in you, that you almost become kind of a bridge between spirituality and science?
Definitely the latter. Even if they, if let's say a neurofeedback client were to come, in with only the interest in neurofeedback. I don't know. And it's not through my evangelism, because I typically don't really bring up too much of my shamanic work unless they are in, like, they're actually asking me about it. But they wind up just being so open.
Wow. That's such a
so cool.
gift.
Yeah.
Yeah. You've probably been doing a lot of work also during this whole lockdown and quarantine. And I'm curious if you've noticed that there are any like just prevailing trends or things that you're seeing in your clients.
Mm. I've definitely seen an increase in demand for shamanic readings.
Mm.
And yeah, I would say that I wouldn't say that the questions they're asking are any different than the ones that, let's say, pre-COVID have been asking. And but yeah, I would say the trend in general. So this is, aside from quarantine, but it's just sort of the trend that for at least in terms of the people who are interested in receiving a reading from me in the first place, be it if it's right now or 2 years ago, is what is my life purpose? That's a big one. Or how do I bridge my my job with my purpose? That's another big one. Similar, a little different. Sometimes the question is related to love. Is this person right for me? Or when will that right person be here in my life? And then another really common one would be rooted in either past life or ancestral healing.
Mm.
And
That makes a
so,
lot of sense.
yeah, so a lot of times the past life stuff winds up relating to, um, just wounds from the past that continue to impact them in their current life. And ancestral based needs are similar but a little different. A lot of it is like family dynamics and like repeated behavior that have been passed down from generation to generation.
Do you yourself actually go in and do a shamanic journey like for yourself?
Oh yeah, totally. It's super fun, and I do find that there are moments where, like, it's almost like there are challenges because when you are emotionally invested in your own life, or if you're emotionally invested in your children's lives or whatever, uh, like I'm human, so sometimes like what I want to receive is not what I actually receive as an answer
Mm.
from the allies. So I have to approach it a little differently than if I were to approach it with a client. So it may mean that I get an answer from the allies if this is like a journey for myself, or for like my family, but then I would need additional confirmation either through um, a tarot or through the eating, or I would ask, like, show up in a dream. Like, I need to get that confirmation through a dream, because like there's just no way you can make up a dream. And yeah, and of course sometimes like it's I feel like every psychic needs a psychic, so right, like, so yeah, so I have a few that I can consult with too.
Have there been like, I'm curious if you've actually gone in and asked about just the time in which we're living right now and what we're actually meant to kind of learn about ourselves and come
yeah.
through. Yeah.
Yeah. I think two big ones I'd like to share is, and I think the first one is certainly really obvious, but sometimes we need to hear the obvious again. At least I do.
For sure.
um, is
100%.
that this is the time to be really clear on your values. This is the time, if you are still not clear on your values, it like, I mean, and this is really part of this, like, this question of life purpose. Well, if you know your values, you technically don't need someone to tell you what your life purpose, because you already know. You may not know when that job's going to come. You may not know what form it will take, and that's really when someone like me is there to support. But I feel that knowing your values will prevent you from, being spoon fed from one practitioner to another, or, looking for that guru. Like there's no guru out there. Like really there's none. And whoever claims to be a guru is total bullshit. Like, I mean, like honestly, because the function of spirituality is to empower yourself. It's not for another person to, dispense this wisdom and they're placed, on a pedestal like that. That's not the kind of model that I subscribe to. And it's like deeply, really, really, really patriarchal. And a lot of abuse of power can take place. And we don't need to look very far. Like just turn on Netflix. There's a lot of there's a lot of documentaries that have shown this. So, going back to this, like, why is this happening? I don't personally think that the virus is a gift. I don't personally think the virus is here to teach us anything. I just really believe that the virus exists because it exists. So it's not to serve humans, because to me that's really narcissistic, but humans can make a lot, like we can really make some beautiful lemon meringue pie or lemonade out of this lemon and be really productive about it. And so for me, I feel that one thing we can do is really understand what our values are. And then the second piece that the spirits have definitely warned about is pay attention to your civic liberties, because it will continue to be taken away. The government and those who are part of the government will find ways to use they will use a lot of things in the name of public health will be talked about, and it's up to the individual and the mass, which is a collection or collective of individuals, to really state what their values are. So, let's say if it comes to a point where there's mandatory vaccination, hey, you want to live in this country, you better fucking get this COVID vaccination. Where do you stand? Like, are you comfortable? And these are the questions. I know it's like kind of darker and very like it's a bit, doom and gloom, but I really do feel that's a very important question to ask. Like, how important is freedom and how important is security? Because this idea of freedom, security, like this is on a spectrum here that we need to really talk about and really understand where are we in that value system of security and freedom.
100%. No, thank you so much for sharing that perspective, and especially sharing the perspective that, the virus is here because it is, I think we put so much emphasis on it. Just, it's like obviously it's like the thing that we're all going through right now, and in our own sort of egocentrism, it's easy to think that this was delivered for a purpose for us,
Yeah.
But like you were saying, there's always an opportunity to learn and to arrive at a new understanding of yourself and your values too, through things like this. And that's really kind of, to me, what the purpose of it all is. It's a blessing in a sense, right? It's an opportunity.
This actually reminds me a lot of this podcast I was listening to the other day, where they were saying that the current structures and systems that exist are born out of, for better or worse, a need to control. And so I really appreciate you having brought up all of those things, because it sort of put that thought top of mind again for me, because it may not necessarily be like a call to action for me to like rebel against like the powers at large, but I do think it's really important to always keep that in mind. And so to watch the ebb and flow of the conversations, to see like what is coming from a place of fear and a place of anxiety and this need to control, and what is really truly for the greater good, and where do I stand within that.
Yeah, very much so.
And I think, I was just thinking how so many of us, we all just so many of us, we think we know ourselves, but then when push comes to shove, like we do things that are like inconsistent with what we think that we know about ourselves, which to me is like, oh, well, I guess I didn't really, like, I guess I didn't really know what my values were. And right
Yeah.
now, because we're all in this situation where most of us, unless we're, frontline professionals, that we are at home, um, we have to be able to answer that question. Like, something as basic as like, wow, like I didn't know um, stepping outside when I want to, with who I want to, was that important for me. Like I wouldn't have put that on my top 10, but it is.
Hmm. Hmm.
Or something like I don't like having to order something from a bakery 2 days in advance because I hate meal planning. Like that is just not me, right? Like how am I supposed to know that I'm going to feel like that 2 days from now? Like I didn't know when I want to eat spaghetti. I want to eat spaghetti now. And so that is like, whoa, the privilege of immediacy. Like I didn't realize how much of like how privileged I am in the sense of like, yeah, when I want it, I can get it. Well, it's not like that anymore.
Right.
Not right now, at
Hmm.
least. If I want something and I do want to support local small businesses, but I have to be organized and be like, yeah, I think I'm going to feel like takeout spaghetti on Friday. And like me, if I don't feel like it, I still have to eat it.
I mean, that's actually a really good example.
Yeah, it is.
It's like all these things that we take for granted. And you're right. It's like the values that we have can be found in the most minute, seemingly unimportant kind of decisions that we have to make, but they're
Yeah,
there,
totally there.
Yeah. Wow. Um, I'm going to switch gears a little bit. And let's start talking about dream interpretation because I actually have read several headlines from just different news sources that, I mean, clearly dreams are a thing that people are going through right now. And everybody has their rationale for why they're going through, like everybody's having these crazy dreams because of the quarantine. But I know that you do a lot of dream interpretation in your work, and I'm curious, like, how you approach that, and what are dreams here to actually tell us or teach us?
So the way I approach dreams is it's this free oracle that is completely personalized and tailored to you. So
Ooh, that's
um
cool.
yeah, like I love it because it's like, technically, like I mean most of us have, tarot or oracle decks at home. Um but you don't even really need that. Like if as long as you can access your dreams, and everyone can, it's just sometimes there may be some hurdles that we have to get, over to be able to really consciously access it. Yeah, there's lots of wisdom, and it's completely tailored for you because it's yours. It's occurring for you and in you. Yeah, so the way I interpret them is very much how I interpret shamanic journeys. I don't see them too different from each other. And it's like obviously a lot of times dreams don't contain spirit animals or plant spirits and such. But I wind up either relating to them in that sort of yin yang tradition, or once again it's just through like intuitive hunches as I'm reading that particular person's dream, or as I'm assessing, what exactly are my takeaways for my own dream.
Hmm. So we actually sent you a dream each of us have had over the past, I guess, week or so. Sam, yours might have been a little bit longer. Am I right?
Yeah, she's mentioning hurdles. I was like, yeah, mine just sort of like dissipated. Like there are days I wake up and I'm like, I know I had very vivid dreams last night, but the second my eyes are open, it's just that's all I know.
Mm.
Yeah.
But sorry to interrupt. Yes, I'm super excited about this because I have no idea what to expect.
So just to recap, the dream I sent over to Mimi was, I just literally had it, I think it was yesterday morning even. but it was strange because it started out with the SNL cast was in there, and to me,
so much.
I was telling Mimi earlier that I've been watching a lot of 30 Rock. That's like been my guilty pleasure. And so I feel like the SNL cast sort of made its way to me through that that constant, like literally it's been on the background like for hours every day. So they were there. And it was almost like we were in this like sort of in-person group class, and it was outdoors, we were outside for sure among nature. And there was a woman who was guiding. She was like sort of the teacher and kind of giving us exercises to do. And I can't really see her face anymore, but I think it was probably one of the SNL cast members. And at one point, this is like a super nonlinear, very impressionistic dream, but at one point, I remember being asked to play like a scale on a keyboard, but it wasn't like a piano keyboard. It was something on the ground, and I had to like kind of actively walk or skip around this keyboard to play this scale.
Oh my God. That totally reminds me of the
Like
scene
in Big?
Yes, in Big, where he's dancing on the
Yes.
keyboard in Macy's or whatever store it is.
Totally. It was kind of like that, but not as like, I can't say it was as literal as that. It was almost kind of like we were in nature. So there wasn't like a keyboard outside. So I feel like what I was like walking on was, it was a keyboard of sorts, but it was not an actual piano keyboard. You know what I mean? It was just things that made noises or sounds.
And then we were like equivalent.
Exactly. And we were doing some sort of like exercise together where we had to take like a negative feeling of ours and like mold it into clay, which sounds really like tangible. Like this concept sounds tangible, but it was really strange. It was almost kind of like we had to like reach inside ourselves and extract this like, this ambiguous kind of feeling, this like, this emotion, and somehow make it into an object, out of clay. And I found myself like kind of sculpting this thing. And sound was somehow represented in that too. I don't quite remember how it fit in, but I think it alluded to the whole like scale playing or keyboard thing before. But this object, this like, creation out of clay was supposed to represent something inside of me. And I remember we were like all gathered around and sharing what we made. And the whole time I felt like, everybody was speaking and I was kind of waiting for my turn, but it never came, or I kept on getting interrupted. And at the very end, when I woke up, I still hadn't yet shared what I had created. So that was my dream.
Are you ready?
I am.
Okay. So the fact that this takes place outdoors, with such like publicly known people, essentially. I mean, most people know who the SNL cast. I mean, of course, that was changing, but like they're very visible. There's this idea that there's something within you that wants to be seen and that wants to be recognized publicly. And not only publicly, but by people who you deem respectable or people that you admire. And yet at the same time, like you are working really hard to get through your own like inner hurdles, and identifying them and really like calling those shadows into consciousness. And this is really that exercise of working with the clay or working with that emotion to represent as something tangible, such as clay. So you're doing that, and you're like, it sounds like there's just moments where you're like, well, what's the point? Because people aren't really even wanting to see me. People are like interrupting. People are wanting to hold more space. And it winds up being intrusive on my own space. So there's this idea of like you really wanting to be seen, and it's not even seen from an emotional place, but it's like as an identity, like you want to prove to others something. There's this imposter syndrome that is really longing to no longer feel like an imposter. And this idea of perhaps at some point you were told you couldn't or you weren't smart enough, or weren't fast enough, or weren't something insert blank enough.
Mhm.
And now it's this like you're really needing to overcompensate, because it didn't sound like other people were playing with that keyboard, but it was you.
Mhm. Mhm.
So you're doing the keyboard, so that's one task, and then you're like extracting that negative feeling, and mold it into something from clay. That's another task, and then of course, you've done that. But then when everyone in the circle is starting to share and go around, that you just never get that turn. So there's this like, how do you feel how others perceive you? That's really the big question that this dream is bringing up. Uh,
Mm, mhm.
and A, is it even true? And B, do you let yourself have a turn? Like when you're quiet at home in your own thoughts? I think that's a really important question to ask is like, do you only give that productive, approved part of yourself, like the part that already receives accolades, like, the SNL cast members? Like, do you only hold space for that part of you? Or do you also hold space for that playful, um, I don't know, just this adaptive, you're sort of improving a bit with that keyboard. Um, do you give space for that to come through?
Wow.
Yeah, that's so crazy.
Holy crap. That it like I mean, literally every single theme that I've been going through. I mean, I had a couples therapy session yesterday where I was telling her, like, I went through a miscarriage like not this past Monday, but the Monday before, and
Oh, sorry.
yeah, it was actually, it's truly a blessing in disguise. And I went through the whole gamut of emotions, but I was telling her that it almost as a blessing forced me to just sit on my ass for like, 2 or 3 days and not do anything, not even meditate, like literally just veg out and watch a shit ton of like 30 Rock and like, you know, be on my like just be and not have to like even meditation sometimes feels like I'm doing something, right?
Mm,
Like I'm
sure.
Mhm.
seeking something.
You're being
And
productive, right?
I'm
Like,
being productive. Yes, exactly, and like these 3 days I literally didn't do a damn thing, and it was not uncomfortable because I was forced to do it, but it was new for me. It was
mm,
definitely something that I felt like, oh, this is not my norm, like this is something I have to like try on and feel it out and like get comfortable with. And wow. Oh my God. So many
So
things.
many things. That was incredible.
Yeah. Okay, Sam, go.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So mine was not nearly as fun with a cast of comedians, but mine included people from 3 different stages of my life who have never met in real life. So one of them was my best friend from first grade, and we haven't seen each other in about 15 years. But in my dream, we were together as adults, and I don't not clear on the context, but there was something that she wanted to go to, or there was a place she wanted to be, and I wanted to go with her. So I was following her, but I felt a little bit left behind. Like I was trying to communicate with her, and I don't know if she couldn't see me and she didn't know I was there, or if she just didn't want me there. But then we get to this place, still unknown, and we run into one of my college roommates. And my childhood friend and my college roommate are getting along beautifully. And they, in the dream, knew each other, and they were having a lot of fun. And so I asked my college roommate if I could join in, and she told me just to keep following them and that it wasn't a big deal for me to be there.
mm,
Yeah. And then somehow we end up back at my childhood friend's apartment building, and we were waiting for the elevator, and I had never been there before, but as soon as we got onto the elevator and it starts to rise, I realized that the walls of the building and are falling away, and that there are no walls around the elevator. And as it's going up, my friends aren't aware at all that this is happening. But I'm grasping onto a handle, just trying to keep the centrifugal force from pulling me down. And then we get up to her apartment and we open the door, and Ellen, you'll love this. Garrett Stearns is sitting on the couch drinking a beer. And Ellen and I used to work with him, and he is just having a great time, and he's so happy to see us. And he's like, yeah, come in, relax. And then I wake up.
So when he tells you to relax, is it like, how a mansplainer tells a woman to relax? Or is it like
No.
genuinely like, hey, like chill with us?
Yeah, he was genuinely like happy to see me there. And he
Okay.
it wasn't like, there wasn't this sense of like missed communication that I had been feeling earlier in the dream with my childhood friend and my college roommate, where there was a sort of just like a poo-pooing of it. He
Mm,
was like genuinely excited to see us all. And at that point, it was like we had all just come together.
got it. Okay. So this dream, it just feels like it's a lot about power dynamics. And the power dynamics, it could be, once again, in relationship to people in your life, not necessarily those specific people, because I don't even know if you even keep in contact with any of those people that you've listed. Um,
I haven't talked to any of them in a very long time. And my childhood friend, I haven't seen in at least 15 years.
right. So, then most likely it's this idea of a power dynamic internally. Um, it's interesting how when you're going up that elevator, that the walls of the elevator starts falling away, and the others don't notice anything. Um, but you're getting pulled down, and you're struggling to hold on to the railing. Um, it's like, so I'm just gonna just like full on ask you if you feel sometimes, and I don't know if this is like necessarily with your family or with like work situations or whatever, or even friendship situations, where you feel that you put in perhaps a bit more weight than others, and that you have to, there's like more, and even if it's not more weight in terms of like actual tasks or actual things, but there's like more emotional labor coming from you. Like you're
Well,
contributing more in that way.
yeah. So this dream actually happened right around the time that the whole quarantine began.
Again, okay.
And my parents were out. They live in Colorado, but they were out here in California visiting me. And so this happened while they were here. So they're still here with me. So that probably sheds a lot of light on this.
Yes. Okay. So that's really, like, yeah. So I think that's really the big theme, is just like this idea of um, responsibility, and this idea of that balance between giving and being appreciated, and being valued, right? Like that appreciation and value, and even the awareness that you're even giving something in the first place.
Mm.
Because this is the thing. Like, I mean, I don't know about you. This is very human. This is a very human experience where a human gives. It doesn't have to be a thing. It can give energy. It can give love. It can give time. This particular human gives to another human, and that other human is like not even aware that that has been given. And so really this question that this dream, like in terms of, I've talked about this in my dream courses, but I always say that every dream has a CTA. So in marketing terms, a call to action,
Yes.
right? Like there is a call to action. And what's more important than interpreting the dream accurately is, do you know at least what that call to action is? And are you going to follow through on that call to action? Because whether if I say, oh, Garrett represents so and so in your life, or Garrett represents blah, blah, blah in your life internally, that actually is not nearly as important as you being able to take that CTA and then do something about it.
Mm.
Because that's the whole point of each and every dream, is like, what was the CTA, and am I going to be able to execute on that CTA? So knowing this dream that you shared with me, um, I would interpret the dream as having a CTA of really asking yourself, what are you contributing It can be financially, it can be in the form of time, it can be in the form of space, or it can certainly just be in the form of emotional labor. What are you contributing, period, in the context with other people? And are you being clear on boundaries as things begin to fall apart? Because like at the end, everyone still got to the floor of that apartment, right, where that
Mm-hmm.
particular college friend, excuse me, childhood friend lives.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all made it, but it seemed like the other two weren't even aware that there was danger along the way, and that there was struggle, and that there was like all this extra demands to be able to even get there. But you did.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you were to apply that also in the context of how your childhood friend was going somewhere, and you're like, well, does she see me? Does she even want me there? And it's just it just really seems like this idea of communication and being able to set those really clear expectations on what you can do and what is, affirming for you, in balance with what is, what others may need or want or expect from you. Um, and yeah, and then in terms of, like this idea of, um, you asking, if you can join in, right? Like to me, it's like you're being thoughtful, you're being mindful. Um, and yeah, so it seems like you feel that you're doing so much, that you're doing more than your part, you're being really considerate. And maybe it's important for you to state that need, if that's a need that you have, for it to be reciprocated back. If I were to strip this dream of, because a lot of things happen, there's a lot of movement in this dream. Um, and correct me if I'm off, but I feel that there's like, if I were to kind of name a few words as themes, is uncertainty,
Yeah.
um, and burden, and even resentment. So that's actually something that I talk about in like my dream courses, is like, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what happened first, what happened second in a dream. What happens, like what most important is to be able to arrive at that CTA, is to really identify with the feelings. And for me, it's like, if I can summarize it to just like 2 or 3 words, that helps me really access the feelings better. So I'm kind of doing this right now, like, like in process right now. So those would be the words that I pick up. And then
Mm-hmm.
you can then just say like, okay, well, how do I feel about those words? Does it feel aligned? Does it feel misaligned? And yeah, like, whoa, like when she said, let's say, uncertain, like, how did I respond to that? And then you then can figure out, okay, what that CTA is. Because I think this is really, and I feel like this dream is really going to serve your listeners, because I'm sure people are in these situations where it's like, wow, like I don't want to step on other people's toes, but I still need to really take care of myself, and I still want to be seen, and I have my own needs. I'm sure everyone's seen. There's this like particular one that's been circulating, and it's like 2 Twitter messages, and the first woman says like, "Oh, I know." COVID really shows like who my real friends are. They haven't gotten in touch with me yet. And then they're like, basically like, fuck them. And then part 2 of that Twitter message is like, oh, we really have to be careful not to be so narcissistic to think that everyone, like revolves around us. And so it's just sort of showing these 2 sides. And I think that that is really true for a lot of us right now, where like we have needs, and then yet like we need to contribute to sort of to this conversation with others, or this relationship with others, and you with the actual humans that you're also sharing home with, and also internally, right? Like the various
Mm-hmm.
people that occupy who you are inside. um, and then just knowing, yeah, like why does your childhood friend and your college friend get to go up that elevator without struggle, without even noticing, and you are being really pulled down, and you're struggling, and you're like, holding on and like trying to keep it all together. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Like as you were talking, I could like all these little situations with my parents over like the last few weeks have been popping up. I was like, oh yeah, there was a time where like they didn't notice this, or there was a time where I should have been more clear about what I needed here, and like so
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And if it doesn't resolve, then, you may either have another dream, maybe with these characters, maybe not with these characters, but the volume of the dream will be louder. Like maybe there's this built-up of frustration or feeling like, you know, just maybe the feeling of suffocation or maybe the feeling of being pulled down or struggle in general. It will continue to be amplified. And that's the other way why I love dreams is if you're not resolving something in your waking life, the dreams will continue to show up.
Wow.
They won't leave you alone because they're meant to help you. Um, and when you do solve something, that message from the dream will retreat and it will give space for another type of message to come through your next lesson or your next thing at hand.
Okay, so I have a really quick and maybe side note question. For someone who I think all of this is super fascinating, and I'm like, okay, bring on the dreams. I'm ready for the messages. But what happens when, for example, the situation like the one I was in comes up and it's like, okay, I know I'm having these vivid dreams, but the second I open my eyes, all the details are gone. How can we capture those?
Yeah, totally. So you can cast a spell. Just like part one, when start there. So really simple spell. Okay, like it's not crazy in the sense of like elaborate. And I like simple. I like quick and effective because we are modern women. We're multitasking. We've got a lot on our plates. So I don't follow traditions that have really elaborate rituals, and that's actually one of the reasons why I love Chaos Magick because you use what you've got. So quick Chaos Magick spell for retaining your dreams. Before you dream, do you have an altar?
I can make one.
Okay, so set up some type of representation of something, like that kind of really helps you connect with the divine or connect with that greater energy source or your greater self, whatever. Doesn't matter. We're not going to talk about like how do we define, goddess or whatever. So set up an altar, have a candle and have a sheet of paper and write on that sheet of paper a one sentence intention. And it might be like, it might be something like, I will remember my dream in the morning, like whatever, like it's whatever it is that you intend, but it needs to be one sentence and it's got to be clear and set it in present tense in terms of, like verbs. Yeah, like if we're talking about grammar here, you're not writing it in future, you're writing it in present. So I remember my dream or my dreams or whatever. It can be something like that, or I can recall my dreams. Um, and at that point, I don't know. I mean, this is the thing. Ideally, you are using a herb that is associated with the dream world because they just really, like, as a plant medicine, they really just help execute it. So ideally, you have mugwort, but it may not be possible that you have mugwort, and it may not be super practical to source mugwort since that we're all indoors right now. But maybe if it's within your means, you could order it from, like an apothecary, and they can ship you some. And it's fairly accessible from an apothecary, and it'll be in dried form. So let's say if you have mugwort, and once you have mugwort, then you can place a pinch of the mugwort on that sheet of paper and then just either fold that sheet of paper up or roll it up in a way where the mugwort is almost like it's like kept in that little intention and that string of words that you've written. And then at that point, you just simply either close your eyes or visualize or do whatever you need to do to really focus in on that intention. And you are asking that plant ally, mugwort in this case, to assist you. Then you can blow out the candle at that point and either leave that little envelope or pouch, that little scroll of herbs and the spell itself or the written words itself at your altar. But for me, what I like to do is I like to just tuck it into my pillow and then just go to sleep. In the morning, see if anything has changed. And if not, do it again and do it again and do it again and do it again. You may need to do it a few nights. Now, that's part one. Part two
Okay.
is your phone out of your room, out of your ensuite washroom if you have an ensuite washroom, or like just keep it far away from you. And lock your bedroom door. Why? Because I find sometimes it's even nice to put something like in front of your door as a visual so that when you get up, you don't just go to the bathroom. You don't just like go get your phone. You need some type of visual reminder that no, you are not done your night's work. The first thing you have to do is check in what came through last night in dreams. And I want to redefine what a dream is. A lot of people tend to think a dream is about it's a story. They think it's either linear or impressionistic, but it's typically some form of narrative. But I want you to just for a moment suspend that definition and replace it with a new definition, which is what came through. And the what can be anything. It can be a feeling, it can be a sensation in your body. All that is relevant, and write it down right away. So if you woke up feeling off, then literally just write the word I feel off and see if by you just stating that and acknowledging that and then welcoming that, if anything else then starts coming up through the dream rather than saying, oh, I didn't dream.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right. And sometimes it's like you just like, I've had dreams and I really do call them dreams where I wake up and it was just like, I remember there's this one where I was like, oh, the word that came through was slow. I was like, I can't remember anything about the dream other than like that word came through slow. So I wrote it down. And then after writing it down, this additional sort of hit came. And the word now had expanded from slow to be slow today. And it was interesting because like all sorts of weird things happened that day. And I saved my ass, or my dream saved my ass, because I was cautious and mindful. And I indeed had flowed down. I'd taken the advice of the dream. But
Wow.
it's so easy to say I didn't dream because like nothing happened. But it's like sometimes you just need a word.
Wow.
Powerful. So so Sam, when you go to bed, cast that spell, wake up in the morning and prevent yourself from starting your typical day, like either by locking the door or putting something, that normally isn't there in your bedroom, that be like, oh yeah, that's it, like a visual reminder to stop
Mm.
and then to kind of go back and ask yourself what exactly came through. And if you did that for a month straight, and it sounds like we might all be cooped up possibly for a time.
Yeah.
That is incredible.
I can't wait to try this. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Whoa.
So you mentioned Chaos Magic. This is like on my list of questions, like because it's part of your mystery mentorship program that you're about to launch. I think is it May 3rd?
Yeah, module 1 starts on May 3rd.
Okay. Can you tell us all about this? Like, I
Yes.
feel like I'm going to hang up and like sign up for this.
Yeah, so the mentorship, I'm calling it mystery mentorship, and it's a 5-part or 5-module mentorship that spans 16 months. Module 1 starts on May 3rd, and each and every module I'll be tackling a set of different themes. And the mentorship will be an intersection of essentially everything that I do, not only what I've taught in the past, but also what I do in my private practice. So that's really the big one, because some of these things I haven't actually taught in individual courses yet. And so now is the time to sort of really like walk with me, for the next 16 months. And if it's not 16 months that you feel called to, you can just sign up for like one or a couple different modules that fit your interest or fit your time, you know, commitment abilities and so forth. And yeah, so we'll be talking about, we'll all be covering core shamanism, plant spirit medicine and plant magic, chaos magic, uh, the Mother Peace Tarot, which is a shamanic tarot that was designed by Vicki Noble and Karen Vogel. And I've actually studied with Vicki Noble. And other things such as the I Ching, which is once again that beautiful, very, very robust and complex Chinese divination system. And yeah, so it's going to be very integrative and multidisciplinary, and we'll be meeting, every Sunday, either through a live course or sometimes just for function. It will be a pre-recorded course, and we'll have check-ins, where I will hold people accountable, and it'll include access to all my live monthly stream courses, all my live stream courses. And then you can sort of access those as electives, and then also have access to my catalog of courses I've offered in the past as replays or on-demand courses, and you'll have access to that as electives. So, and when I say electives, it means that they're optional; they're not required. But my sense is, if you have access to it, you may as well take up that information and incorporate it into your practice. So really, the point is this mentorship program is to really get deep and to really access the hidden and to find ways to make occult and shamanic practices real and relatable and relevant for you. And because it'll be all done online, it's like, we can essentially, like, I can now reach, a global audience. And because everything will have replay, even if, time zone doesn't align, you'll still have that option to study on your own, and be able to check in with me during those accountability sessions.
That's so rad.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for offering this. This is
Wow.
a great program.
Oh, I'm so excited. And I should probably mention a few other key things that I'm guessing if, if there are listeners that are interested, that these probably would be their next questions. So the question is tuition. And I decided it was really clear. The spirit said, make it on a sliding scale. And so yeah, so that's there. So essentially you pay what you can afford, and it's a really wide range. The high range of the sliding scale was the original intended pricing. And I've really made sure that, I've really kind of looked at it, like how low can I go in terms of affordability while still making it affordable for me to do this. And so, yeah. So there's a pretty significant range. And then of course, there is, like I said, that option of just signing up for one module at a time or just a couple modules, if those are like the only topics you're really interested in. Or, walk with me for the whole time.
That's incredible.
Yeah, that's so cool. So
Thank
if
you.
everybody wants to learn more about the program and sort of what the modules offer, where can they find you?
Yeah, so they can find me on shopceremonie.com. Ceremonie is spelt with an IE at the end. And once you get into the page, it's that first tab. It's super clear. It says mystery mentorship. And then, I have been talking about the mentorship program in bite size kind of, chunks on Instagram. So it's the same handle. So it's just at Shop Ceremonie. And you can find information there too.
Yay. I always like to ask this one last question of everybody, but I'm curious what your biggest takeaway or piece of wisdom has been, that you've gotten from just your practice doing this like so many years.
Mm. I don't know if it's like a lesson or wisdom per se, but I think it's just been like a huge paradigm shift for me, is just really realizing that it's dangerous for humans to think they are the center of the universe. Very, very dangerous. It gives us license to do all sorts of horrible things to the environment and to, each other even. And when one shifts from that perspective, I talked about it earlier, this idea that, God created humans and everything around is to serve humans. When we can shift from that story to one where it's very much about like humans being one aspect of everything, where we're just one spoke in that wheel, it really changes your values, and it changes how you show up in the world. It changes how you relate with things that are typically seen as quote unquote stuff, or beautifying things, even like houseplants, let's say, like they're alive, and they are they're people, like they are a form of life. And I speak with my houseplants, and I swear they help me get stuff done. Like I really, really do. It's crazy, like when you relate with plants differently, rather than like, oh yeah, this is a pretty thing that brightens my space, that cleans my air. Like it's so different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love my houseplants. They're like my babies,
They really are. Yeah.
Yeah. They all have their own sort of like unique personalities and stuff. And yeah, they just bring me so much joy. And they're now starting to like new buds are forming and new leaves because it's springtime. And it's like one of my favorite things to wake up and actually walk over to the plants, which is right by my bed. And I just check on them and just see like all this newness and new life kind of coming through. It's really cool. Mimi, thank you so much. I can't even begin to express how meaningful this conversation has been and just how much I've personally learned from it. Thank you for the dream interpretations. Oh my gosh, I'm re-listening to that. And the spell, all these things that we can actually apply to our lives. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been super fun.
Yeah, we can't wait to share this with everybody. They're gonna love it.
Aw, thank you.
Music for Woo New is composed by Adam Miller.